This is The Journey Podcast Edition. If what you're building didn't come with a playbook, you're in the right place.
Hey everyone, welcome back to The Journey Podcast Edition. I'm your host Paul, and today we're going to be talking about something that sounds very mundane at first, but it is one of the most common and kind of important decisions that founders can face on the day-to-day. When to open your checkbook. Or maybe more accurately these days, when to hit pay now on the invoice. I don't know about anybody else, but I haven't written a paper check in about 15 years, so checkbook is just a turn of phrase. The checkbook isn't really about paper, right? It's about permission. It's about the moment that you decide to spend money instead of time and how that choice shapes what you're building. If you have frugal instinct, that's pretty useful when you're bootstrapping. Every dollar feels precious. You become acutely aware of what's leaving your account. You might refresh your banking app like it's social media. You might feel a little proud every time you figure out something yourself without paying for help. And for a while, that scrappy frugality feels a bit like a superpower, and it's useful. But eventually, that superpower kind of loses its gloss. It mutates a bit. What starts out as resourcefulness slowly turns into resistance. You stop thinking about spending, not because you shouldn't, but because you're scared. You're afraid to spend and use the money poorly. You don't want to make the wrong call. You don't want to see the balance in your account drop. You don't want to be irresponsible. I've been there. I struggle with this still to this day, knowing when to open up your checkbook and pay for a solution. When I first started Six Catalysts, I was really cautious about spending on anything that wasn't directly tied to revenue. I wanted to stretch every dollar just to kind of prove to myself that I could be responsible and manage that money wisely. The mindset worked up to a point, but there's a hidden cost to frugality. Cost we rarely think about or calculate, the opportunity cost of our time. Let's say you save $1,000 by doing something yourself. Maybe it's your website, your bookkeeping, your marketing strategy, whatever it is. You feel good. You avoided an expense. And what if that task took you 20 hours, though, half the week? What if those same 20 hours could have been spent taking sales calls, doing work for clients, or building systems that generate $5,000 in leveraged value? If that's the case, you didn't save $1,000 by doing that thing yourself. You actually lost $4,000. That's opportunity cost, the invisible price tag attached to every hour you spend doing something that isn't your highest value work. And if you're not paying attention to it, you're making decisions based on fear instead of leverage. So how do we start spending money strategically without feeling reckless? Well, I find that it helps to think like an investor. And that mindset kind of shifted and changed things for me when I was learning to treat my business like a bit of an investment portfolio. Every decision where you put your time, your money, your attention, it's an investment. And the goal isn't just to minimize cost, it's to maximize return. So instead of asking, can I afford this? Start asking, what's the return on this if I spend the money? Here's a quick way to think about it. I call it the buyer DIY framework, do it yourself. When you're facing a decision about whether to pay for something or do it yourself, look at these 7 dimensions. Time in hours. How long will it take if you do this yourself? Cash, the direct cost. What's the hard cost of outsourcing or buying a solution? Opportunity cost. You multiply your hourly value by the time that you'd spend doing it. Learning value. Will doing this teach you something that compounds? Error risk. What happens if it goes wrong? How bad could it be? Repeat value. Will it continue creating value over time without extra effort? And the last one, strategic leverage. Will success here make other parts of your business easier, better, or more productive? If you're looking at a spreadsheet version of this, the sweet spot is where total cost is lower and your green columns outweigh the red columns. And a little bit easier to kind of see that like with your own eyes. So go hit the companion post. I put a link to a spreadsheet that I put together to kind of illustrate this concept. You can kind of find it there, copy it to your Google account if you want, make it your own. Okay, so some examples of this. What if you're an insurance agent? So let's make it concrete that. Imagine that, you sell insurance and you want a website. Total cost to do it yourself, including time to learn how to do it and other things kind of alongside that, might be $20,000 when you factor in the opportunity cost, right? And your cost to hire someone who already knows how to do this, $5,000. You probably won't rebuild that website again anytime soon. So the repeat value of learning how to do it yourself is quite low. The error risk, what happens if you bugger it up? Medium, maybe some reputational risk. And the strategic leverage is low because you don't build websites. It's not core to what you're selling. You're selling insurance, right? So the verdict on this one, buy it. Your time is better spent doing business development and selling policies, not learning CSS or HTML. Here's another example. Snack foods. Let's say that you have a company that makes small batch snack foods. You're deciding whether to DIY your packaging design or hire someone who specializes in packaging design for food. DIY route, maybe it'll save you a couple $1,000, but the risk of screwing up your nutrition labels or barcodes could lead to fines or product recalls. There's regulatory compliance risk. That's not really a learning moment, that's a migraine. So in this case, you also want to buy the expertise. That risk from regulatory errors, the error risk, outweighs the savings of a couple $1,000. Here's another example. Let's say that you own a small retail shop. You're, kind of making and selling artisanal candles or something like that. So if we kind of look at this one, you're fulfilling orders for your e-commerce store in-house. But someone suggests outsourcing to a 3PL, a warehouse, like a contract warehouse, right? So your decision is, do I keep using my existing staff to go to the shelves in the shop, pick orders, pack them up at the end of the day and ship them out? Or do I create a separate pool of stock in a contract warehouse to fulfill those orders? 3PLs, contract warehouses, they come with fixed costs with overhead on top of the variable costs. So if your 3PL costs you $25,000 a year, but your in-house fulfillment costs you $10,000 a year, it seems like a fairly simple decision, right? Your repeat value is high. If you use your staff in the store to ship orders, they're going to get faster and better at it over time. Your strategic leverage is also high. You'll be able to personalize orders. And if you're shipping inventory out of your retail store, if you own a retail store and you're not doing this, start personalizing orders and doing really fun things with your marketing, like leaving handwritten notes in the boxes. Those things deepen customer loyalty and build repeat business. So that's strategic leverage, right? That's high. Your error risk, it's pretty low. Mistakes can be fixed with good customer service, and shoppers, they're a little bit tolerant of problems and mistakes with online ordering, knowing that they can be fixed. So the verdict on this one, do it yourself. Don't outsource to a 3PL. Now, of course, you're going to hit eventually a point where the scale of your online store, if your business is growing, means that you have to engage a 3PL most of the time. So at that point, cross that bridge, but not early on, not right from the start. How about we apply some systems thinking to this? As the zeros start multiplying in your business, decisions like these, they get heavier, right? And that's where systems thinking comes in. Before you write the check or refuse to write the check, just stop and ask yourself a few questions. If I spend the money, can I reverse the decision later? Or if I don't spend the money, is this decision reversible? Can I learn from a mistake and correct it? Is this problem recurring? Am I going to face this again and again and again? Does solving this problem create an asset like a process, intellectual property, or maybe a new capability amongst my team and in my business. And finally, ask yourself, will outsourcing this, buy or DIY, can I buy it? Will outsourcing this free me up to do higher value work? If you answered no to reversible, no to recurring, yes to creating an asset, and yes to outsourcing, freeing up your time, that's usually a pretty strong sign that you want to buy the solution. Conversely, if you answer yes to is it reversible, yes to is it recurring, no to will it create an asset, and no to will it free me up to do higher value work, probably this is a DIY call, do it yourself. So if you think about it this way, you're not just solving problems, you're shaping the operating system of your business. The way that you make decisions starts to become a repeatable process when you think about decision making and spending money this way. And that's where leverage starts to really kick in with your leadership. Another thing I want to talk about is the paradox of control. And this is kind of a psychological layer that we want to unpack here. It's not really a math problem, it's more of an identity problem. Entrepreneurs are builders, doers. We wear kind of that badge proudly, and it's baked into how we see ourselves, really. If I can do it, I should do it. That's how a lot of us think, especially if, this is a first venture that we're kind of embarking on. There's a paradox, though, that we want to be very aware of. Control scales inversely with impact. So that's, kind of a fancy way of saying that the more you try to control, the less room there is for your business to grow. Because as your business grows, there is more to do. If you're trying to hold on and do everything yourself or do a lot of things yourself, then there's more to do and you're trying to do more. We can see where this becomes a limiting factor. You become the bottleneck. As your company really matures and grows, your job really needs to shift from doing to deploying. So instead of being a do-everything maker, you need to become more of a multiplier. And that shift, it can feel uncomfortable because you're letting go of the thing in the mindset that made you successful in the first place. But it's the only way to grow once you start to scale. This is something that it took me a long time to internalize. Frugality is an amazing survival tool, but a terrible growth strategy. When you're early stage, being scrappy keeps you alive. When you're scaling, being scrappy keeps you small. The real skill isn't knowing how to do everything yourself. It's knowing when not to do something yourself. It's learning to trust other people's expertise. It's learning to spend on things that multiply your time and accelerate your momentum. And it's also learning to detach your ego from the illusion of total control. You can't scale if you're still holding every lever, right? At some point, you have to hand a few of them over and trust the system that you've built to run the way that you've built it.
And that's it for this episode of The Journey Podcast Edition. If you're building something from scratch or scaling something messy, make sure to follow, share, or just send this to someone else in the trenches. Until next time, keep climbing.